football with ESPN's Bill Connelly this morning on the show. And Bill, as always, I'm restraining myself from just talking soccer with you. I know we could probably fill a whole segment, just the two of us doing that on the day of a Leagues Cup semifinal in Nashville. But we will stick to the college football this morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready for Leagues Cup. I'm ready for Premier League. Whatever you want to throw at me, we can do it.
I was going to say, no, Bill, go on, let him have it, man. Listen, go on, fill his cup up with a little soccer minute here, man, because he is geeked up about this match tonight. Do I even say match? What do I call it?
Match. You're right.
I call it match. Okay.
Perfectly fine. Bill, a top 25 poll out yesterday that we'll certainly get to in college football, but wanted to start with the article you had last week about players who could impact the college football playoff the most this season. You've got Joe Milton at number one. Ultimately, what made that decision for you on him being the guy that impacts the CFP race more than anybody?
Yeah, I mean, basically there are two guys, Joe Milton and Drew Aller, who fulfill every role you need fulfilled. They could be a spoiler quarterback because they're playing other contenders, obviously, and they have enough upside to do damage there. And if they reach the ceiling that we already know they have, they could be a lot more than spoilers. They could insert themselves into the race in some way. And you know, I've said it all off season. Like, we know the downside of investing heavily in Joe Milton. Like, we've seen, you know, he's ended up on the bench twice after earning starting jobs. He takes a lot of sacks. He takes his time sometimes finding the guy he wants to throw to, and it gets him into trouble. But if it clicks, I mean, guys usually don't get third chances, and he's getting one. And if it clicks, we already saw the upside against Clemson in the Orange Bowl last year. We saw some of the downside too, because, you know, 4 sacks or whatever. But the upside here is absolutely enormous, especially in that offense, and especially with the weapons he's going to have. So I don't think there's anything more fun for college football in 2023 than the thought of Joe Milton clicking and playing at a Heisman level or something. That's going to be that would certainly be something to watch.
ESPN's Bill Connelly with us. And Bill, I think it's interesting from Tennessee's perspective when on paper you have as much turnover as they do. You would expect all the metrics, the analytics, and just the analysis to dock them a few points in that category, right? But the nature of Josh Heupel's offense, does that kind of overcome that turnover, so to speak, where, yes, you have totally new wide receivers on the field, but that didn't really hurt him too much in the Orange Bowl against Clemson last year either, when a lot of those new faces were making new impacts that day as well?
Yeah, I mean, number one, when you were number one in offensive SP plus last year and you lose your quarterback, you're only going to fall so far, right? That's and so they're projected to fall, quote unquote, to third on offense. But I think one of the funny things, just the way, you know, my returning production formula works, the fact that they already played without Cedric Tillman half the year, and other guys got more reps in that, you know, McCoy, Keaton, et cetera, you know, they already kind of matched his stats to a certain degree. McCoy exceeded them. So, in that regard, you know, it doesn't really feel like a brand new receiving core with the amount of production that McCoy and Keaton and Squirrel White's going to have the most unbelievable year this year. Like, I'm very excited about him just filling that role. Josh Heupel slot receivers always average like 20 yards a catch and are among the most fun players in the country. So yeah, on paper it doesn't even look as much turnover as it feels, and you know, that's a good thing from a projection standpoint.
There's a few quarterbacks in college this year I feel like have to prove more than what they've actually done so far. With Joe Milton, that group is KJ Jefferson, Spencer Rattler, Michael Penix Jr., and maybe even Jaden Daniels. What's to be made of this group of 4 right here that's got a lot really riding on their backs?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tricky for KJ Jefferson, I think. You know, he knows that at Maryland was a pretty quick passing kind of coordinator, and I'm sure he'll take advantage of the giant backfield he's got at his disposal. But, you know, a coordinator change at this point, their defense wasn't very good last year. Their schedule's always hard. So it is going to be kind of tricky for him to figure out how to take a step forward, I guess, for Arkansas. But, I mean, you're right, Jaden Daniels was pretty high on my list, too, in terms of important quarterbacks, because we already know, you know, he plays his game and he's really, really good at it. You know, he's hard to hit. He's going to scramble around. He's going to, like, the LSU had just about the most efficient offense in the country last year. But we also know that he's got really good receivers in it. They figure out how to make just a couple more big plays in a given game. It's pretty well contained, getting a first down by 1 yard and starting over. There aren't just a ton of chunk plays. If they figure out a couple more big plays, they're going to be really scary and a very heavy threat to win the West again.
If we didn't have so much of a halo over the quarterback position, could we project Brock Bowers or Marvin Harrison Jr. winning the Heisman this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I do. They come into the season with a certain level of hype where if there isn't an obvious quarterback candidate here, if Kayla Williams, drops off just enough. We know we raised the bar for repeats, and we almost never have a repeat. But you're right. I mean, so many of the other top teams are breaking in new quarterbacks that, in theory, maybe this is a year for a non-quarterback to stand out a little bit. And if somebody's going to, it's going to be those two because they are pretty unbelievable. I don't know. I mean, it's so funny. We just put out our ESPN top 100 players list. And I think Bowers was number 2. Tight end is number 2. That's not something I can remember happening. And it's not exactly hard to justify because of the skill set he's shown. So curious what his ceiling is, but I think Marvin Harrison could absolutely put the stats up to stand out.
Bill Connelly of ESPN. And Bill, you also wrote a great article on breakthroughs and bounce backs. We just were discussing the AP poll, and Ramon said, gosh, Florida State, getting some love, and they've built some momentum along with, kind of the emergence back of USC. Can these two programs specifically keep building on this momentum and become powerhouses like they once were?
Yeah, I think I feel a hair better about USC just because we know they're going to have, if Kayla Williams is on the field, they're going to have one of the 2 or 3 best offenses in the country. Mm-hmm. And because they still won, 11 games last year with a dreadful defense. That is, they're still not going to have a good defense this year, but they don't have to. If they have like a top 50 defense, they're going to be a contender to finish, 12-1 or so. And I think they can maybe hit that, getting Bear Alexander in there, getting Mason Cobb, the linebacker transfer from Oklahoma State. They're going to be a lot tougher this year on defense, even if that system still isn't very good. So I'm pretty excited about them. I think they can, anytime you talk yourself into a USC or a Texas or whatever, you realize you're stepping on the same rake you've stepped on 30 times. But I certainly like USC a lot more than I did this time last year. As far as Florida State, yeah, I mean, they weren't very good the first half of the season. Things clicked for them really nicely over that 6-game winning streak at the end. But they got to show a little more offensive consistency, and they got to defend the run a lot better than they did last year. They got pushed around at times. So I think they have a bar they can clear. I think I trust USC to maybe clear it a little bit more if we're talking about, top 10 expectations and whatnot.
Isn't it kind of ironic, though, Bill, that, with all this new conference realignment, the Pac-12 has now diminished, which don't get me started on that. But the Pac-12 this year is going to be pretty legit with, you look at the quarterbacks up and down the conference, and then, it blows up. It's very weird, right? Yeah,
and it stinks, too. Just the simple fact that, they have, 5 of the best quarterbacks in the country, 4 or 5 of the best quarterbacks. Just the entertainment potential here is going to be off the charts this year. They got 6 teams that think they can make the Pac-12 championship game. And every single broadcast at some point is going to, shift to, hey, all these teams are leaving. And that stinks. There's going to be a little dark cloud associated with all the fun we're having watching the teams play. And, yeah, that's never optimal. And yeah, don't get me started on the moves either. This one hit me pretty hard and I don't even know why, but it hit me pretty hard this time in realignment.
Bill Connelly with us this morning on RKW. Bill, a team ranked ahead of Tennessee that I think turned some heads around here in the preseason AP poll was a team that was 93rd in yards per attempt on offense last season. And that's why they brought Garrett Riley in to be their new offensive coordinator with Cade Klubnik and Clemson, looking for a little bit of an offensive renaissance this season. Can you make sense of just why they were placed ahead of Tennessee other than just, hey, they've been better over the last 10 years and are a safer pick for a lot of voters?
Yeah, I think maybe, the AP poll, the funny thing about the AP poll in specific is, some voters are treating it like a power ranking. Some are basically trying to project forward to the end of the season. And I mean, you could certainly make a case that at the end of the season, Clemson's going to have a better record than Tennessee because their schedule's quite a bit easier overall. So, I mean, I didn't necessarily read a ton into Clemson being ahead of Tennessee. I did think when you look at my SP Plus projections versus the AP poll, Tennessee being 12th was pretty low. Like that's, we don't completely know what they've got on defense, I guess. But I mean, SP Plus still had them 8th overall. So that, yeah, comparing those two, it's more about Tennessee than Clemson, I think. And yeah, there was a good case for the Vols to be a little bit higher, I think.
Bill, from the SEC perspective as well at Georgia, is Carson Beck the most underrated Heisman Trophy pick? If you're a betting guy at the beginning of the season, it just feels like we mentioned Brock Bowers and just the weapons that he has around him. Feels like the floor has got to be pretty high for him. What do you see from Georgia at the quarterback position this season?
Yeah, we always focus on the guys we know, and then it's like how many times does the first-time starter win the Heisman?
Right.
It's pretty frequent over the last 10, 11 years. So, yeah, if you kind of read into the practice reports a little bit at Alabama and Ohio State, two of the surest spots in the country as far as quarterback play goes, you can get a little nervous about those schools, and maybe you cast your gaze towards Carson Beck at that point because of everything he inherits. I mean, coordinator change there too. I did not love, after the what ended up being an incredibly progressive hire in Monken there at Georgia, bringing in an old friend. I mean, I guess if he's calling from the same playbook, it doesn't even matter. But I didn't love that hire, and I think they've got a little bit of something to prove there, even if the rest of the team is so good that it doesn't matter. But you're right in that thinking. Like a new quarterback for a team that's probably going to be in the top 5, it's going to be a safe bet that they're going to get some Heisman looks.
Bill, as far as this era of football, college football that we're in right now, it's a matter of what you believe and what actually comes out of everybody's recruiting. One in particular right now with NIL is Michael Orr's situation and the selling of his rights. Man, do you think we'll see more of these types of things of just have kids being taken advantage of, or just not understanding what you're getting yourselves into?
Yeah, it's going to be. I guess I could go either way. On one hand, you don't end up needing to follow the stories of people who say, come with me, and we'll treat you really well. If NIL is going to end up with you getting a lot of money anyway, but. That's not a great line of logic, I don't think, because we already had a lot of agents, quote unquote, involved. Not professional agents, but uncles and random family friends and whatnot who are kind of inserting themselves into this whole NIL process, and that's probably an opportunity for the wrong people taking advantage of other people. And that's something that's always been a little bit of an issue in college football, even if the blindside story was particularly unique in that regard. Yeah, it's always been an issue, and I don't see it changing when there's more money floating around, among other things.
Bill, when you look at the SEC and the coaches in it right now, obviously some coaches that are having a lot of success, but some coach or one coach in particular that maybe you have your eye on that could be on the hot seat, just in terms of the production this year if they don't get to that level?
In the SEC? It's you assume Clark Lee has a long leash at Vanderbilt, and they actually could, at least get back to like 3, 4, 5 wins this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's probably, I guess Sam Pittman's my answer, honestly.
Really?
I just, they're going to be kind of borderline top 30 in my final SP Plus projections, and that's certainly good, but that only gets you about 6, 7 wins in the SEC West. And the fact that they have 2 new coordinators coming in, the fact that defense kind of fell apart last year, I think that program is a little less certain than it seemed over these last couple of years, and they need to bounce back. Obviously, they got Jefferson and Sanders. They've got an incredible backfield. They're going to they're going to have a few games where everything clicks and looks amazing. But if a 6 or 7 win projection, there are a couple extra close losses and they go 5 and 7, that's gonna. I think we know from Arkansas, like they don't mind a little drama, and that could that could spark up in a hurry, I think.
Do you think Jimbo is got the problems fixed there at Texas A&M?
Well, I think they are enough that they'll go, 8-4, and scare a top team because their defense is going to be really good. I don't have much doubt about that. And the offense is kind of in a can't get worse situation. Petrino will get them a little better at least, and they lost a ton of close games. So yeah, they're probably fine in that regard. You're still paying a ridiculous amount of money to go 8-4, but I would assume at the very least that would earn him a 2024 season, if nothing else.
Bill, on the way out, when it comes to Alabama and their quarterback situation, is there a gut feeling you have on who gives them the best chance to contend for a championship? I think it's so interesting that the conversation around Bama is turning back the clock to like 2012 and just running the football 50 times per game, playing outstanding defense. And I still can't believe the article that said that Nick Saban was looking for his Stetson Bennett. Like, well, why are we looking for a guy 25 years old who can't graduate college?
Yeah, it is funny. I've laughed at myself all off season because I've really tried to talk myself into the Alabama questions a little bit. Like, they haven't had this many questions marks at quarterback since 2015 when they won the national title. It's still Alabama problems, but it is. I do have more questions about Alabama than I've had in a very long time, and it starts there. We know Milroe can run, didn't really prove he can pass, had a complete opportunity to seize the job in the offseason, and after spring ball, they brought in Tyler Buchner, who certainly showed upside, especially against South Carolina in that bowl game last year, but he also threw a couple disastrous passes as well, and he was all over the place. And the fact that they brought him in after spring, I thought was extremely telling, and maybe it gives them a leg up in getting the job. And man, Tyler Buchner, like a Notre Dame second stringer starting for Alabama, is not what we're used to, and that's different. The defense, they did have questions in the past, but the defense was also one of the 2 best in the country. Now it's like one of the 10 best, and they will absolutely need improvement on that side of the ball. And this is Alabama, so they'll probably get it, but it's still something they have to – there are extra hurdles they have to clear this year.